Captain Picard. Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
My Readier Room.
Hello, and welcome to the Readier Room, the only Star Trek Next Generation rewatch podcast with on-the-set stories and behind-the-scenes magic. My name is Mitchell Mells, Chief Consultant of Services at Paramount. With me, as always, is my life partner, Brandon Hobbs, Head of Resources Management. Brandon, how are we doing today?
Well, as always, doing great, Mitch. I am drinking a White Claw. Have you ever had one of these?
A White Claw?
White Claw, yeah.
Is that an alcoholic beverage?
It is, yeah. My daughter got me hooked on them.
Yeah? Is it, what kind of alcohol is it? Is it vodka?
It's like a wine cooler of some sort. It's like sparkling water with fruit flavor in it.
Well, what exactly is a wine cooler? Cold wine?
You would think so, wouldn't you?
I would, and I am.
But it's not.
To me, wine was always a heavier alcohol.
It is. It's not refreshing.
Right, exactly. Which is, I imagine, why the Italians like it so much, because it goes with their heavy food.
Right, of course.
Yes.
Of course. That is usually how you pair things together like that.
Exactly. So are you going to be able to do the podcast with this heavy wine in your system?
Well, it remains to be seen, Mitch. I guess we'll find out as we go along. This can kind of be a test run.
Okay. Now, here's a question. I know it's called a White Claw, but is it white wine or red wine cooler?
You know what it is? It's orange.
Orange. I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Orange wine?
I know. Well, it says mango on the front.
Okay. Does it taste like mango?
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That they're not falsely advertising it. Like they put lemon flavor in the mango can.
Right. That would be silly.
That would be silly.
Yeah, it's orange. It's totally orange.
Okay, so would you recommend White Claw to the people at home?
So far, I would.
All right.
Not sponsored, by the way. I just like it.
Hashtag not sponsored.
But White Claw,
hit us up.
Just throwing this out there.
We could be the first Star Trek podcast to be sponsored by an alcoholic beverage purveyor.
We could. I think it would be great.
Yeah, I mean, we got to call in some of our connections. I don't quite know anybody in the beverage business, but I know people who know people who know people in the beverage business. Right.
I mean, yeah, we were a pretty beverage business adjacent back in the day, weren't we? So
yeah. So it's all coming full circle, but it always starts with that first olive branch, and I think we just did it by mentioning the brand. You make sure you
I think so.
Show the label. It's
show the label.
It's a good time. All right. So before we get into this week's episode, I got a little something for you. Mitch gonna give it to you. He gonna give it to you. Mitch gonna give it to you. He gonna give it to you. First, he got a question, and it's of the week. Question of the week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
this is new. This is a new side of you.
Yeah. It's sometimes you gotta cut loose. I mean, I'm not the one drinking alcohol right now, but it gets into all of us. It's a contact high.
I'm impressed.
So this week's question comes from Data Whore on Twitter, and Data Whore asks, were there ever any on-the-set romances? I think the shipping community deserves to know by this point. And I guess they do. I know the shipping community has been involved in a controversy as of late with that like blockage in the canal. So maybe they need some levity, I suppose.
Yeah, they are having a tough time, huh?
So it's not quite our place to, air other people's dirty laundry, but what the hell? It's our podcast. We can do it. So the answer is obviously yes, of course, on the set romances. The Next Generation, I think it's very obvious from a viewer standpoint, but in case you don't know, it's a show that's really charged with a lot of sexual energy. And that's almost entirely due to the chemistry between the actors while they were on set. Kind of had it all. There was, budding romances, flings, one-night stands, passionate breakups, the whole nine. You could make a soap opera on the production of TNG. But I think a lot of the romantic involvements and the stories that we have kind of come from seasons 1 and 2. Like, there was Denise and Brent. Yeah. They kind of had that one-night thing. I remember Denise and Michael had a few dates. Denise and Patrick, they had a relationship for a couple months. That one was pretty long. I think there's some stories about Denise and John. I don't quite remember that, but
there were.
Yeah, sure. There had to have been. Like, you see some of those shots of them reacting to one another, but I guess in retrospect, Denise was kind of the nexus of that sexual energy. I mean, by the time he left the show, I think most people on the set had a ride at some point. But it was the 80s, Sure. It was a different time.
Yeah.
So you can't judge anybody. Some, like, in the 80s, some people liked that hairstyle. You can't judge them.
Right. And, even I'm a little disappointed that I didn't get a ride.
Right.
Well,
would you now in the year 2021?
Oh, Lord, no, Mitch.
I can see why. I think everybody can relate to that feeling.
Yeah, no.
All right. So, thank you very much, Data Whore, for the question of the week. And if you at home have a question that you want us to answer on the Readier Room podcast, you can either tweet at us at the Readier Room or send us an email, thereadierroom@gmail.com, and that's with a capital T, capital R, and second capital R. And if it's a good question, we'll answer it on the week. But let's be honest, they're all good questions. So many great questions. All of them. All right. So that's our pre-episode business. It's time to get on to this week's episode, which I do know the title of, but I don't quite know how to pronounce the title. It's either When the Bow Breaks or When the Bow Breaks.
Well, now you got me second guessing myself.
What did you think it was?
Well, I thought it was. I thought it was When the Bough Breaks.
I think that's right. No,
right?
Yeah, it's hearing it.
Yeah,
it's jogging my memory.
It's like the song When the Bough Breaks, the cradle. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? It had never occurred to me that that's what the title of this episode had come from. So it is.
Oh, really?
It's all coming together.
Pretty smart.
It is.
It's a pretty smart title. I gotta say, this episode. Well, I mean, we're gonna have a lot to talk about here. But it features the magnificent Jerry Hardin, who would go on to be Deep Throat in the X-Files.
A truly watershed role.
Absolutely. Well, even more of a watershed role was when he came back for TNG as Mark Twain.
Can we talk about Mark Twain
right now?
Yeah.
The character or the person?
Well, the person was kind of a character, but the Star Trek iteration of Mark Twain.
I mean, say your piece, but
I think that Mark Twain somehow becoming the villain of an episode of Star Trek is the worst thing that happened in the entire series.
In the entire series,
yeah.
I mean, it's pretty bad. Yeah, it's pretty awful.
I think it's worse than the clip show in season 2. I think it's worse than the Naked Now. That was the 6th season, the 2-parter between the end of the 6th season and the beginning of the 7th season. We should have known better by that point. We don't have the security blanket of the excuse of being early in the show's run. No, we all said, yeah, Mark Twain. That makes sense.
That does seem like early season content,
right?
For sure.
And Guinan knows Mark Twain for some reason. Like, what the hell?
All right. We can't discuss that now because we're going to discuss it 3 years from now.
All right. Put a bookmark in this. But
yeah. So we also have Brenda Strong from Desperate Housewives. who is
you're
looking magnificent.
you're blowing my
This
mind right
episode.
now. She plays the young alien on the planet, right? The one that's not super
Yeah.
old. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Now, I don't know if you know this about me, Brandon, but I am a huge Desperate Housewives fan.
Is that right?
That's right.
I can see it.
I watched, I think the first several seasons of that show, maybe like the first 4 or 5.
Wow.
Yeah, I was very into the intrigues of Wisteria Lane. And
who was your favorite couple?
God, what was the name of the actress who was on Seinfeld and she had the breasts that they thought were fake and she's like, no, they're real and they're spectacular.
Oh.
Her and the guy who's, I think his name was Mike. He was like a mysterious carpenter, not unlike Jesus, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and they met on that boat?
I think so. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, great show. Not really. Kind of a terrible show, but I liked it. Anyway, point is, I didn't recognize that connection at all, and of course,
wow, yeah, that it's impressive that you didn't.
Of course, at the time, I wouldn't recognize it either, not being clairvoyant.
Yeah, that might have something to do with it,
right? So, I'll say this: we railed on the quality of the guest actors last time, and this time everybody did everybody who was not a child did a pretty good job.
Yeah. I have to agree with you, and that was something I was going to bring up too. Is just it's almost night and day compared to last episode.
Right.
Maybe they're not that great, but the weaker ones are at least serviceable in this episode, and I think Jerry and Brenda do a fine job.
Yeah,
everything kind of comes together believably in terms of the acting.
The thing about Jerry, going back to Mark Twain, is that his Mark Twain was terrible. It was comedically bad. It was comedically bad in the same way that the Admiral in the previous episode was terrible when he was like super old and doing that terrible voice.
Right, yeah. I mean, that just comes down to a direction problem, though.
Yeah. Just blame everybody else on set.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't have been his fault.
No, not at all. So the guest actors are good. I think the plot of this episode, the conceit of it, is also pretty good.
Yeah, the conceit of it.
Yeah, and then maybe not the execution.
yeah. It's got a lot of cool ideas. I think the idea that this alien civilization has this tech that protects and destroys it at the same time, and they've been living the way they have for so long that they don't even remember what a computer is and just kind of blindly follow its instructions when it's clearly not even that smart.
Right.
Like, it doesn't really have any will of its own.
It's basically
like that.
It's basically an Alexa.
It is, yeah. It essentially is an Alexa. So I mean, conceptually, very possibly interesting stuff, but
well,
it doesn't come together.
It doesn't. But what I like about it is the depiction of this alien races or their societies' morals, where they're like, yeah, we took your kids, you can just make more and we'll pay you. It's fair. We took something, we'll give you something. It's fine.
Yeah.
It could have been, and it kind of was, a little bit clumsy, but at the same time, like, I enjoyed just how alien that line of reasoning feels, while also being like incredibly logical about it. Now, I think this falls apart when you recognize that there's no attempt made to make the aliens not look like humans, like to not be exactly the same as everybody else. And if you're gonna have this completely alien sense of morality, you need to back it up by not just passing them off as humans from another place.
Here's where the plot falls apart for me. it falls apart in two places, and that's the conflict comes from the Enterprise not wanting to give away its children,
Right.
but the aliens need, new humans, I guess, to continue their race or their planet or their society. Now, in this universe, in the Star Trek TNG universe, orphaned children still exist.
Right.
So this could have been a chance to open up diplomatically relations with these people by just bringing orphaned children to the planet for them.
Or just like artificial, I guess not insemination, because the women are also sterile, but just something. Because like I assume by this point, the ability to make a, quote, test tube baby has probably progressed.
Yeah.
Granted, maybe that idea wasn't so prevalent at the time. Like, I certainly know it came to the public eye a little after this happened. So that might be... that criticism has the benefit of time. But, yeah, it's... neither party is really acting logically here, where the Enterprise is making no attempt to ameliorate the issue for the most part until they discover like what the sickness is, and the alien race is not open to any other solution other than 6 children for their entire race.
Right, and that's the issue, is like when this conflict could be resolved so easily, it really just makes the entire narrative fall apart. And then the resolution is that they cure the aliens of their radiation poisoning or whatever, and that just feels like a cop out in itself, because I mean, TNG excels when the Enterprise crew has to make the hard moral decisions,
right?
And it's like, yes, relatively speaking, maybe it is bad to leave the society childless and dying, but is it worth giving up the children of the people who live on your ship?
Well, that's why I thought the premise was interesting, because
right.
It is asking the characters to make to confront difficult topics, and the more that you think about it, where you're like, oh well, I can see why this race thinks this way, and I can kind of understand their position. The more the episode challenges you to engage in that kind of thought, generally, the more interesting that it is, and the best TNG episodes do that. So when you see glimmers of it in episodes like this, you're like, yeah, I can kind of see it. It's not
this
great.
Episode just did everything it could to not let that happen.
Right.
Basically.
Which was the breakdown of logic takes you out of that space, because when you see everybody acting illogically, there's no incentive to try to puzzle out the motivations or the right and the wrong of what's happening, because the situation generally would not play out this way in any sense. And the breakdowns in logic are numerous on both sides of the field. Like I mentioned that the plan is to repopulate their race with just a few children, which is incredibly short-sighted from more of a writing perspective, but it's not actually the writer's fault this time. I mean, it is a lot of the time, but not this time. So the first casting call for child actors called for like a lot of extras. Of course, only a few are going to have speaking roles, and those roles were maintained into the end. But instead of like 6 children, it was going to be dozens more, like a lot. Basically every child on the Enterprise, rather than just pulling out the special ones. But I think at that point, Gene's reputation was kind of getting around town, Hollywood, and most people, I guess these days, people would call him a sex pest. But the point is that parents didn't really trust him around their children, and whenever we had to get child actors, it was always difficult. We had to pay the parents like a lot more for the use of their children, which ironically mirrors the episode in this case.
Oh, yeah, it does, doesn't it?
But at that point, like once we saw how this went, we kind of had this meeting, and everybody had to tell the writers like we can't really use children so much. Please stop writing child-centric episodes, at least that involve more than one or two children. And that was an ongoing rule. Even after Gene died, like his specter haunted the set, and people still felt uneasy about loaning us their children. I can't blame them, because we tell a lot of stories on this podcast, but the stories that were going around about Gene, like we have not even begun to delve into that.
Yeah, it's just the tip of the iceberg,
right?
Really. We were lucky in this case because we were able to supplement the cast quite a bit with relatives, or child relatives, people who were working on the show already. I know. Now, who was it? Whose kid was that? I can't remember. I can't remember.
Which actor?
But we did have one. No, it wasn't an actor. It was someone who was working in the crew. His daughter was part of the cast.
Are you talking about like the really bad one, the young one?
Yeah.
Oh, I think that was the lighting director. His daughter. Maybe.
Yeah, you might be right about that. It's actually interesting. So the whole conceit of the episode, as we were talking about earlier, with the children and all that, like it's always been, from its inception, it was always going to be a very child-centric episode.
Right.
They were always going to be the main focus, and it was always going to be this conflict about, like an alien species trying to steal children away from their families. Now, the thing is, this got all confused in the middle of filming in such a way that we basically had to deviate entirely from the way this was going to happen. It was actually going to be a whole cool scene. So the thing is, you'll notice, the audience will notice, maybe they didn't, Riker's limp in this episode.
Yes, they right at the beginning, very, very close to the beginning.
Yeah, right at the beginning. It's so quick it'll pass you by. It's just a kind of an offhand comment. So this was not acting. This was not Frakes acting. I don't even think that he would have had the chops to pull this off convincingly.
It's a pretty difficult ask.
It is. I mean, the limp is an advanced acting technique for sure, especially for John. So what happened was, a couple minutes after we started filming, a couple seconds after we started filming, basically, he's walking down that hallway that you see, the corridor, and he trips on this errant prop someone had left, like a transponder or a phaser or something, and he twists his ankle, right? And of course, John being John, he starts crying about it, and Kim, the director, is just at a complete loss. Partly because Frakes is crying, partly because he suddenly realized the wheelchair just wasn't turning left.
Yeah, that was when the problems began to set in.
Yeah. And as we discussed last episode, would last for a good another 20 episodes or so.
A long time.
Yeah. But yeah, so we were lucky because, like I was saying, we did have cast members with children and stuff, and that day in particular, we had the whole Wheaton family there, right? And we were able to pull Jeremy in, and basically we made up the character of Mason on the spot to explain all this away, right?
Right.
Because that's what happens in the episode. Mason bumps into Frakes, and I'm confusing character and actor names now, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Mason bumps into Riker, and that's somehow he gets the limp from that, which is very confusing.
But it's a good example of kind of using what you're dealt, playing the hand that you're dealt, because
it was resourceful.
Yeah, it ties into the theme of the children. It kind of foreshadows what the episode's going to be about, and it explains away the limp. So
which is why it doesn't even seem like an accident.
Right.
It was a very resourceful move. The problem is the introduction of the Mason character basically meant that, I mean, look at it this way. You can't introduce a character and then not have him show up again, right? You know, you need to build on that character, or else there's no reason to have it in the episode. So the casting you were referring to earlier, you know, that was for, you know, dozens of children who most of them were going to be in the background, as you said. Maybe a couple of them would have had speaking lines.
Right.
What was intended to happen was we were going to have another saucer set sequence.
Oh, right. We were planning that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, as the audience knows, the families live on the saucer. Basically, the aliens were going to kind of tractor beam the saucer in, you know, and that's where the families would be held. And it was kind of just like a hostage situation where you didn't need like named characters and, you know, interactions in the ways that we had on the show, or, you know, in this episode. So that one little introduction of Mason basically forced us to scrap the saucer sub sequence. So yeah, instead we had to beam all the children down to Aldea, and that's how we ended up with the cast of children we got, basically.
I remember the special effects crew was particularly disheartened. They were planning like a lot for the saucer set sequence.
Yeah.
It's
a shame because it's really cool. I loved it in the first episode. Would have loved it again.
And the reason that we made sure to have it in the first episode was to show that the Enterprise can do this, because it's something we wanted to do pretty often.
Right.
Right. And once we got robbed of this chance, I think a lot of people lost their saucer sep excitement. It's
yes.
It really died down.
It kind of petered out. Yeah.
Right. Like, oh, why bother? It's just gonna get interrupted again. We're not gonna be able to do it. I don't want to get burned again.
Right. Yeah. You know, on the crew side, that's how we were feeling. It was just so disappointing. And then, you know, on the audience side, it had been so long since we saucer sep, they didn't even remember it happened.
Exactly.
So, you know, if we wanted the saucer sep again, we would have had to do, you know, go through the old song and dance of introducing the concept and everything. And that would have taken, 15 minutes out of an episode?
Right.
Which, you know, every now and then is fine, but
you got to remember that it was, you know, Gene was always very, very adamant that if something were to happen like the saucer sep, it needs to have a realistic time frame given to it. So seeing the saucer and the rest of the ship kind of slowly disconnect and drift away over the course of 10, 12 minutes was necessary. That was part of the part of why the first episode was a two-parter, to give time for that to happen. So it was a dark day for everybody on set.
It's a shame. And yeah, I would like to, I think, kind of rewind and go back to the beginning of the episode a little bit, because I have a lot of questions about the things that happen there.
Please.
So I do want to note that this is the first episode that does not open with an external view of the Enterprise.
Ooh. It's a nice piece of trivia.
Yeah.
Which
was
bit of a camera flex.
Well, yeah, you know, I mean, like it was noticed. That's all, you know.
I think it's because it didn't open with a captain's log, I believe. Maybe it did. I to be honest,
it didn't.
Oh, it didn't. Yeah, there you go. Because when you have the captain's log, it's like, what else are you going to show? You almost never do you actually see Picard recording a captain's log, just talking to himself. Instead, it's like, all right, we need some generic space scenery to play under this log, so let's just show the Enterprise flying through space. Yeah, and so because it didn't have that, I guess we're treated to Frakes walking down the hallway as the opening scene. Right. You gotta establish the limp.
Yes, of course. So why is... This might just be me. This might just be like my own hang-up. I found it odd that Riker was so excited about Aldea.
Yeah, because he got so excited, I legitimately thought it was some kind of sex planet.
Exactly. That is what I had written down.
And then the first Aldean that appears on the view screen is like this young woman, and you're like, yeah, okay,
Right.
this is totally going to be another sex planet. And it's not. I mean, of course, but
Well, even by the time you get down there and they're talking about how they need to repopulate,
right.
I'm thinking, oh, Riker's just gonna go to town, but no, it's just any old planet, really.
Yeah, so you would think that the roles would be reversed, because Picard is the one who's like
Exactly.
archaeology focused and culture.
Yes. Riker's never shown any proclivities towards this kind of thing.
No. If he can't fuck it, then no.
Right. Why bother?
Right. Or if it doesn't mix with blondes, then he also will be a fan of it. So there was a moment they shouted out to you. There was a bit of writing that played it directly to you, where they're talking about Aldea, and Riker's describing it, and he's like, "Oh, it's like Nainman of Xerxes 7 or Atlantis of Earth."
Yeah.
He references something that's not a pre-existing 21st century or 20th century concept.
That was noted. That was definitely noted, and I did appreciate it. It's nice when they throw those things in there.
Right. I heard that and immediately thought of you. Like, he's gonna love this.
I do, and they really don't do it often enough. Where else did I want to go here? We have the crew worried about decontamination.
Yeah, that was weird.
Several other entities have been beamed to the bridge without the Enterprise's consent before this, and there's been no talk of decontamination before.
And not only that, but even if we take that decontamination is an issue, the response to the decontamination is, "Oh, we used our own transporter to come in," without any talk of being decontaminated, and everybody's like, "Oh, okay, I guess decontamination doesn't actually matter then."
Right. They just kind of drop it. So why have the line in there at all?
And you know what? When it does come down to them being sick, that's the plot point. Obviously, radiation is not contagious without a source of radiation, right. But it's just weird that that's never really. It feels
followed up on.
Yeah, but it feels like an attempt to be smart about it, where it's like, oh, they weren't decontaminated, so we couldn't tell that they were sick until we scanned them at a separate time. But I don't think anybody would have asked that question. Yeah, it's getting my synapses firing, but it's not worth it.
There's really nothing there. The view screen, when Brenda comes up on the view screen.
Yes.
Did you notice how harsh her S's were?
No.
Because I wanted to just shoot my ears off listening to her talk.
What's the problem? She has a reverse lisp where everything's hard?
No. It's just they the sound team, the audio team, just didn't DS the audio at all. So she's talking and her S's are really, really harsh.
Right.
It's not her fault. It's
right.
The audio equipment.
See, I just want to go listen to it now.
Yeah, I mean, you should. You should.
If there's one thing I really wanted to do, it's watch this episode again.
Mm-hmm. I believe it.
That's hilarious to me.
I've got one more thing.
Okay.
Did you want to say something about the harsh S's?
Not the harsh S's, but of this scene in general. I know that the Enterprise was brought there, but I still felt like they had too easy of a time locating this planet that it has been said to be hidden for literal millennia.
Right, because you would think you can't just kind of stumble upon it, right?
Right, but they just kind of look out the window and they see it shimmering while its cloaking device is up, and they're like, "Wait, I'm detecting something. There's something here, but I don't know what." And it's like, this is gonna be hidden for millennia, and they just detect something instantly. I don't know.
Well, you know what it is. You know what it was. It was Troy.
Oh yeah.
It was Troy saying I have to go off on this for a minute.
Please.
So I have no idea what happened in editing, and for the audience, you definitely missed this. So go back to about like 2 minutes into the episode, and you'll see what I mean. But early on, Troy mentions like feeling like thousands of minds, right? They're all standing on the bridge. Troy says, "I feel thousands of minds," and Picard turns to her and says, "Where?" And she says, "Very close." And then the entire crew, per the original direction, all looks directly at the camera. It was yeah. So I say look directly at the camera. What I mean is they look directly at a camera, because in the final episode, it was not the camera that they were looking at that was used for the shot. See, originally it was supposed to be a little bit of fourth wall breaking.
Yeah.
To pull the audience into the story, right? And as you can see, that's not how it ended up in editing. And I remember getting a phone call from DC, actually. She and Hannah were absolutely furious about it, and it actually ended up leading to some pretty drastic restructuring in that department.
Well, I can imagine it's doing something like that is a very clear artistic art endeavor, and if you're not listening to your creatives inside a business like this, what are you doing? Why would they choose to remain on your show? Yeah,
for sure. But that was. I feel like this episode had a fair amount of strange editing, strange direction.
Well, I agree 100%. There's one moment, I think later on in the show, where it occurs when there's yellow beams scanning all the children on the Enterprise. So Wesley Crusher's on the bridge. He's getting scanned by this yellow beam, and everybody starts to panic. And when that happens, there's a series of close-ups on every principal actor, like much, much closer than we're accustomed to seeing on TNG, like jarringly so.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like dual purpose. Yes, in a tense scene, the close-ups, the tight framing accentuates the panic of the characters, and that works for the episode. But the idea was that we were getting really tired of the original opening sequence, and what we wanted to do was have the characters' faces appear in sequence along with their casting underneath,
right?
And use that as the opening. So Gene decided to be more economical to incorporate that into the shooting of an episode so that we wouldn't have to film an extra time. But for one reason or another, it got left on the cutting room floor, and because of that, we're just left with these awkward close-ups that don't really serve so much of a purpose in this episode. Like, Star Trek has communicated tension and panic without the use of such strange close-ups before, but now when you watch the episode, you just see a close-up of Michael Dorn's face, and you're like, back off.
That's some neat trivia, though.
I guess that's why the sequence didn't work out, because you turn on your primetime television, and then you got bam, your whole flat screen is dominated by Michael Dorn, and you just change the channel.
Right.
Very unfriendly.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed to say I did not notice this sequence at all, Mitch.
It's worth going back.
Yeah. That is odd.
So people often ask me, do you watch Star Trek to enjoy it? And my answer is no. I rewatch it to double check the strange shooting and audio mistakes that occur. And that's the only thing I get from it. Yeah.
As one does, yeah.
Yeah.
Also on the bridge early on, we're treated to Troy reading emotions like very specifically.
Yeah.
I can't remember what she says, but
she says that
again,
they want something from us that they know we won't want to give them.
Yes. And how is that at all emotionally readable?
Right. Like, describe that emotion to me.
And yeah, I mean, it's just another example of how concerning Troy's convenience as a character is.
Right.
Where one episode she's completely useless, and the next she is able to say stupid shit like this. And then they beam her down to the planet conveniently.
Yeah,
they don't need her after that, so
they beam down Troy, Crusher, and Riker, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, they just randomly pick, and Picard just like flippantly reacts, like, "Oh, interesting choices." Like, yeah. The hell's that supposed to mean?
Right. Yeah. It was very very sudden too. A very sudden reaction that's like Picard, it had no weight to it at all.
Picard, that's 2/3 of the away team you always send.
Yeah, and the choice for the script to call for Troy to be beamed down is odd because again, the aliens are very straightforward with what they want.
Right.
So,
it's not this game of cat and mouse of like trying to suss out their true intentions.
Right.
No.
Right. So that was dumb.
That was dumb. Also, it doesn't track. Where if the aliens are so worried about like, oh, we want this, but they won't give it to us, why do they act so matter-of-factly about offering compensation and whatever?
Somehow I didn't put that together, but you're absolutely right.
Right. It
does not make any sense.
It's like, oh, we just need dramatic foreshadowing that something's not all that it seems here. And it's like, great. Right. I assume the fact that you wrote a fucking episode about it kind of implies that it's not entirely on level.
Yeah. And, now that you've said that, that is what should have happened, is the alien should have been a little sneakier about it.
Right. I mean, it would have... You can do this one of two ways. They can be sneakier and you don't play them up as like this completely alien way of thinking where they can't comprehend why this is not working for the humans. Or you go the opposite way and don't have Troy make them out to be underhanded and scheming.
Yeah, just remove that one line.
Yes.
And you're
That's really it. It's the whole thing.
So yes, a lot of extraneous stuff on the bridge within the first 5 minutes of the episode for sure.
Yes. And also just how strange it is for them to beam on the bridge and be like, oh my god, these lights are so bright. And then they beam back to their planet and everything's lit exactly the same. Yes. That was another thing that it's so obvious we don't need to get into it, but it was something that I guess I didn't notice because it is just so ridiculous. Right. And I don't think, maybe that's a real symptom of radiation poisoning. I don't know, but I don't think anyone's going to know enough to be like, hey, wait a second, they're irradiated. Yeah. Why aren't they reacting to the lights? Right in. My dad has radiation poisoning. He can't look at the sun. He can't look at the sun for more than 2 minutes without his eyes hurting. Oh man. So yeah, the aliens scan the kids and somehow pluck them off of the ship, just like 12 of them, right? 6 of them. The ones that are, because the problem is not only that they need to repopulate their planet, it's also that they can only do it with people who are worthy or artistically inclined. I guess they have some kind of calling, right? Which I this is like a beggars can't be choosers kind of thing. It's like, all right, are you really that concerned about your planet that you won't take some dud children to just make more children? Yeah. It is a real beggars canyon. I'm trying to think of what else even happens in this episode. I have to say that the kid who disappeared playing the instrument was hilarious looking. as it just like kind of falls lazily over. They beam down. I do want to say one of the kids says to Wesley when they first get down to the planet, one of the kids says, "I'm frightened." Yeah. And no kid talks like this. I love that. I love the children, their collective enthusiasm for engaging in like a hunger strike and non aggressive resistance or passive resistance. Where it's like most children would just be like crying or throwing tantrums or losing their mind in some way.
Right.
But they're all just like, nah, that's cool. I can just
Yeah,
sit here.
they do kind of just take it.
You try to get a child to fucking sit still quietly in the best of times. That's not going to happen. How about the worst times? But I guess they're all child geniuses, so it works out. They study calculus.
It's kind of like self-selecting.
Yeah.
The Picard calls a meeting with the parents or something, and it feels like a PTA meeting.
It does.
It's a very strange Star Trek episode when you have parents asking what Picard is going to do for their children. You know,
they're the most overly enunciated, overacted line of the episode comes in this scene. When the what was his name, Blake? I don't know the character's name. From the beginning of the episode, that child's father is like, the last thing I did was yell at him, and it's like very, very overly acted.
Yeah. I didn't write that down, but that I did observe that as well.
And then that guy never has another line in the episode. That's
he does. He does.
Does he?
At the end, yeah. At the end, where the kid's back and they're walking down the corridor, and the kid says, "Dad, I don't want to study calculus anymore." And then his dad says, "You can be whatever you want, but you still have to study calculus." And then the kid says, "Okay, thanks, Dad."
I mean, I do remember this now, but your description of it is a lot funnier than the episode itself.
I quoted that almost verbatim.
I know you did. But out of context, it's just hilarious. Why don't we talk about the theme of this episode? Where, and I might be reading it wrong, but to me it seems like almost an anti-technological theme, where
it is,
this race has like an advanced supercomputer, but they rely on it too much, and it becomes their undoing, both literally and metaphorically.
Well, you know what? I think more than an anti-tech message, it's because Trek, you're not supposed. I know we violated the Bible a million times already, but you're not supposed to have anti-tech episodes. It's more of like an anti-pollution episode that's not conveyed at all correctly.
Yeah, that doesn't come through to me. Like, yeah, it's radiation, but to me, radiation just seemed like a way for technology to hurt them rather than...
Right, well, I mean, this planet's like destroyed, its oceans and stuff like that. You know, they haven't seen a dolphin before or whatever.
Right. So we used to have fish in our oceans. Right. So, you know, you do have heavy-handed lines like that that kind of hint towards this stuff, but... I don't think it was an anti-tech episode. I think it was a poorly written anti-pollution episode. But there's lines where it's like, "Oh, this computer has done everything for you," and
I guess,
yeah, which again could just be a fumbling of the true message. But I'm not pulling this anti-tech theme from nowhere. I think it is.
I'm not saying you're pulling it from nowhere. I just think that wasn't the intent, even though people are going to interpret it that way. Yeah,
I mean, it's part of the reason I wanted to talk about the theme was because I felt that an anti-tech theme was so antithetical to Star Trek that it bothered me. But if the theme was more pollution-based and it's just bad writing that made it seem like it was anti-tech, well, that's an easier pill to swallow because, you know, it's not running counter to the idea of the entire series.
Right. And I really think that is what happened. Not that it really excuses anything, because we are interpreting... I could easily see people interpreting it that way. I would interpret it that way.
Right.
You know?
It's real. So, if you remove the dolphin scene, I think it's a lot harder to get to the anti-pollution message.
Yeah, actually it is. It is. It is.
Speaking of that scene, there's a lot of implied sensuality with that kid polishing his dolphin.
Yeah, I mean, any interaction with kids in Star Trek is kind of necessarily sexual in some way.
Yeah, just wait until Picard's trapped in an elevator with 3 of them.
Yeah. I mean, just, like the tight clothes and the proximity. It's inevitable.
And the overt non-sexuality of the show kind of works against it in that regard sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Where it can be so sterile that it feels more sexual than it is. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
no, I get exactly what you're saying. Like the bar is so low for any sexual content.
Exactly.
That you're just seeing it everywhere.
We're no longer getting the rocky relationship of Data and Yar that I have to fill the void somehow.
Seems to not be a thing anymore.
Right. It's almost like the writers are hacks.
In Star Trek The Next Generation, you have people who get married, and then you have people on starships who just kind of cycle through partners every couple of weeks.
Whenever it's convenient.
Yeah, and then get jealous of their ex-partners on a dime, basically.
God, I can't wait for the Worf Troy arc.
Oh, that's gonna be fun.
Just a lot of blacked.
A lot of blacked.
A lot of, yes. Do you have anything else about this episode?
Well, we still haven't touched on the other theme.
The other theme?
Yeah.
Does this have to do with the children?
Yeah, so the theme of the episode is to take calculus, right?
Right. You see, and let me go off on a bit of a tangent here, pun not intended.
Uh-huh.
Our brains do calculus every single day. For example, if you're coming across like a park, and there's a path that goes around the park, or you can cut through the park, and you're trying to decide which is a faster, more efficient route for you to take, that's your brain doing forms of calculus without you even thinking about it.
That's a good point.
It is. And obviously, before you take calculus, you can't really put those ideas and concepts onto paper. You're not able to do that math until you learn it. But the concept of what calculus is and is not is intrinsically intertwined into all of our lives. And just like everything else in life, it all comes down to math. And the more we learn about math, really, truly, the more we learn about the world around us.
It's well said.
Thank you.
It's well said.
So it's a good theme.
But I think the theme is more like you have to take calculus class.
Oh, okay. I see. After geometry?
Stop resisting. Don't think for yourself.
Take calculus.
Go through the system. Yeah, take calculus. Which is a great message for kids.
Well, it's nice because that kid, he starts budding as an artist, a quite talented artist. And then his father's like, this doesn't matter, you still need to take calculus.
yeah, it is great how his dad just kind of ignored all that.
Right.
Maybe you should have stayed with the aliens.
Even symbolically, he left that life behind on the planet because he left the dolphin sculpture behind, which is this a visual metaphor for his artistic life.
Right.
And he abandoned it in favor of the life in space, the life of calculus.
Kind of. Well, I don't know. Maybe he's just looking for a new challenge.
Maybe, but it says a lot with so little. And I like to think that the struggle between the creatives and the production at various times of TNG influenced this, where it's it doesn't matter what good ideas you have, you still have to take calculus. We're still just going to do it our way.
Yes. It's a nice little parallel.
Yes.
I think.
Very deep.
I'd like to move on, I think as our last point, the process by which the children leave the planet, I guess. It's a very roundabout kind of solution, I think, to the whole conflict. And I want to talk about how Dr. Crusher beams down to the planet and very obviously hands Wesley something in front of...
I wanted to talk about this too. I wrote this down. The worst piece of physical acting ever put to screen.
So not only does Dr. Crusher hand him something right in front of that woman's face, but he walks around her and like wildly waves his arm over her head.
And the whole time,
the
whole time the gadget's like making noise, like it's clicking, and she takes out the little scanner, and like it's sticking out of her bathrobe in like a very obvious way. It's a whole thing. It's such an awkward scene, and for what? Just so they can scan those people, but there had to have been a better way.
There had to have been, and I mean,
yeah.
Everything that goes into this, like, what you might try to call an escape sequence, a very slow escape sequence, is just very silly. I mean, Data goes down, right? Data's the one who is able to, like, hack the computer, right?
Right. Somehow, he's like, oh, I can't do anything but scramble the inputs. I'll scramble the inputs, he says.
This computer that has been basically unbreachable for centuries.
Millennia.
Millennia. Data just walks down to the planet and scrambles it.
Him and Riker just show up.
Yeah. Yeah. That was really cool. And I was hoping there would be something cooler behind the door than just more of a computer. You know?
The whole door thing was a bizarre setup.
There was a cool foreshadowing bit, and then they walk in, and it's just a computer.
What's really funny is in the foreshadowing bit, they start by introducing Wesley to the computer, the custodian,
right,
and give Wesley level 3 clearance. And Wesley's like, "Well, what does that mean?" And she says, "You can ask the custodian anything you want." And he's like, "Okay, well, what's behind that door?" She's like, "I don't know." And then he just never asks the computer. Like, why not?
Yeah, that is weird. I was expecting like a Wizard of Oz type deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like some entity is controlling.
Yeah, exactly. Which would have been probably better. I think it would have been cooler.
Yeah, but it doesn't gel with the environmental theming.
I guess, yeah. It doesn't really mesh. But I memean, yeah, I don't know. Just seeing more of a computer, it was just okay.
It's exactly what I thought it was.
Yeah. Big oh yeah, so here's a secret that the higher ups definitely didn't want to get out, but you know, that's why you come to the Readier Room for all of your
Readier needs
trivia, right? Exactly. Yeah, there we go. The Readier Room for your Readier needs. I like that. We're gonna put that on one of our shirts once we launch our Teespring.
Gotta get our partnership with the Yeti going.
Yeah, it's coming. Just you wait, ensigns. So yeah, the core of the custodian, that big pillar thing, that was actually built to scale, under the direction of Mike Okuda-san.
Yep. It was fucking huge.
Yeah, it was massive, and so audience, don't forget the theme of the season was Emmys, right? Had to win the Emmys, so no expense was too great in view of that. At least for Gene, right? This is kind of Gene's goal this season, was to scoop up as many of those things as possible.
He was a bit of a gold digger.
He was a gold digger. Yeah. Probably because he was dealing with other gold diggers so much. He himself became a gold digger. To defeat them, he had to become them. Right.
Of course.
So by the time it reached the execs that this thing had been built, it was obviously already too late. And needless to say, the cost was far greater than anything we had constructed at that point. So when that Gambit failed to even yield an Emmy nomination, I guess the shame was just too great, and Paramount did its damnedest to cover it up.
Well, I mean, you can't let that get out.
You can't. So what they did was they paid off PBS to produce an episode of Reading Rainbow, because LeVar was on it. They were up for their 6th season. They paid off PBS to produce this episode, covering this little miniature version that was constructed later, basically as a cover-up.
Right. We didn't spend all that money, guys. It was just a miniature.
Exactly. Yeah. Just kind of trying to say, oh, we weren't really trying. And I think this is the first time this is actually getting out. They may come after us. I don't care.
The truth has to get out there.
Yeah. At some point, someone has to own up to this.
Right. It's a dark spot of Trek history, but it happened, and to not talk about it would be to deny that it happened.
Yeah.
And we're not about that.
There you go. That's your you could bring that up with your Trek friends.
Mm-hmm. Any closing words for when the Bough breaks?
The Bough,
right.
Bough, when the Bough breaks. No, not really. I mean, not a great episode, but...
Well, actually, I was going to say, what did you think about it? We haven't really said just our opinion on the episode.
Yeah. I probably wouldn't watch it again.
No.
It's not the worst thing ever.
Yeah, it's definitely not the worst. It's probably a middling episode for season 1.
Yeah.
And I'll accept that. And they can't all be zingers, not this early.
Yeah, I mean, Brenda was cute.
Yeah, Brenda was cute. It inspired memories of a show that didn't air for another 15 years, which is fun. So if you're a fan of When the Booth Breaks, I recommend checking out Desperate Housewives for more or less the same thing.
Yeah.
All right, so that will do it for our When the Booth Breaks brokerage.
So trivia time.
Oh baby, I'm coming off a win. And wait,
you are?
Yes, I am. Okay, that was last week. Losing all track of time.
Yeah.
Coming off a win, very excited.
Very big win. So here is the trivia for today.
Okay.
The Star Trek The Next Generation commemorative chess set was produced by the Franklin Mint in 1995. Okay. It was separated into 2 sides, the gold side and the silver side. Mm-hmm. Gold was the Federation. Silver was, I guess, non-Federation. Okay. The king was, as you might expect, Jean-Luc Picard of the gold side. Okay. Bishops were Riker and Data.
So the bishops were like the 2 pieces were not the same character. Like they're 2 different. Right. Okay.
Yeah, that is the case for the bishops and the knights. Who was the queen
of the gold side?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First of all, I have to ask if all the pawns were Denise.
No, they were just they were security officers.
Okay. Yellow shirts.
Clothes. Yeah, yellow shirts.
So who is the queen? That's an interesting question. If I had to choose, like, who is the principal female character of The Next Generation, I would choose Troy. If I had to choose who would be, like, the queen to Picard's king, I would choose Crusher.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm blanking on any other female characters, except for Yar.
There's not a lot.
But come on. When did this come out? When was this made?
This was 95, so...
Okay, well into the series.
Yes, actually after the series had finished.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Could be Guinan. But
it could be Guinan.
I don't want to say that. That is too stupid to be true.
Why don't you want to say that?
There's no way it's Guinan. There's no way. Right. There's absolutely zero way it's Guinan. I swear to God, if it's Guinan, I'm gonna be very disappointed in myself. Okay. I'm gonna make a clear, concerted attempt to not out-clever myself this time, and I'm just going to say Troy. Is it Troy? Final answer.
Is Troy your final answer?
Yes.
It is Troy. Congratulations.
Yes, thank God.
Wow.
Really?
All you have to do is not really think.
Yeah, the less I think about these things, the better I do. If it had been Guinan, I don't know what I would have done.
So, who do you think the king was of the other side?
That is an interesting question. So it's not just alien species; it's non-Federation, correct?
Yeah. So it's basically any enemy the Enterprise has ever really had.
Right. I'm gonna say it's a Romulan. I don't know the names of any of the key Romulans, but there's like a couple that reappear.
So you're close. You're close. One of the queen is a Romulan, and the two bishops are Romulans, but the king is Q.
Ah, is Q really a villain though? I guess he's not part of the Federation, but
yeah, it's kind of up in the air there. But yeah,
I would have thought that like the Borg queen would have been the queen.
Yeah, the Borg are the pawns.
I guess that makes sense.
And we got Daimon Goss as the knights.
They were really reaching, weren't they?
I forget. Is it Daimon or Daimon now?
It's
Daimon.
Daimon Waynes. What were the rooks?
For the silver side, it was Romulan Warbirds, and for the gold side, it was the Enterprise D.
The ships, really?
Yeah.
So what I'm getting from this is that Troy is more maneuverable than the Enterprise.
Well, from a certain point of view.
Well, I guess that will do it for today's entry into the Readier Room. Join us next time where we discuss more of Troy's flexibility, and until then, everybody, please stay readier.
The troublesome little man-child.
Consider that in the history of many worlds, there have always been disposable creatures.
Do you consider yourself superior to us?
Should have told him to mind his own damn business.
When I stroke the beard thusly, do I not appear more intellectual?
Computer! Freeze program.
It's not a promising beginning.